Johnny Depp got a final text message once. Nobody knew about this message. The newspapers didn't know. His best friends didn't know. Not even the people who said they understood how he felt. He opened it when he was by himself, away from cameras and all the noise. And in that quiet time, something changed. People who saw him said his face looked different. Not mad, not sad, but in a way nobody expected. It wasn't just a normal message. It was goodbye mixed with love that wasn't said out loud. And what Johnny did after reading it left millions of people shocked. This wasn't just him reacting. It was something that showed the truth. There are times caught on camera that the world watches over and over and talks about forever. But then there are times so small, so quick, that only people who really pay attention catch them. This was one of those times. It happened when he was out in public. One of those events where Johnny Depp was supposed to do what famous people do. Smile, talk nicely, and move on. The cameras were filming, the crowd was loud, and everything looked normal. But then something changed. As he sat down, someone gave him a phone. To everyone watching, it just looked like a helper giving him a work update or a message from his team. But to anyone watching closely, the change was clear. Johnny's eyes stopped moving. It was only for a second. A single second you could barely see. His fingers hung over the screen like he wasn't sure if he should touch it or let it go. For just a split second, his usually calm face changed. Just a tiny bit of feeling, too fast for news stories, but not fast enough to hide from real fans. Some people said it looked like pain. Others said it looked like he was remembering something. The face someone makes when a memory hits them harder than they thought it would. Whatever it wasn't acting. It wasn't fake. It was real. Johnny blinked once. His jaw got tight, just a little bit. And then he smiled. Not his usual charming smile he uses in public. Not the playful smile he uses in interviews to make people laugh. This one was different. Softer, almost sad. A smile someone wears when they've accepted something that once hurt them really bad. Most of the crowd didn't even see it. They were too focused on the stage, the lights, the noise. But the fans, the ones who have followed every hard time, every win, every quiet time, they saw it. Video clips started showing up online. Did you see Johnny's face at 3:14? Comments came flooding in. Something happened there. That wasn't nothing. Some people even slowed down the video frame by frame, looking for clues like detectives solving a mystery no one else knew about. And there, between one blink and the next, was the truth. He had just read something personal, something not meant for cameras or news, something only meant for him. At that time, nobody knew it was a final text. A message from someone connected to his past in a way that no interview could ever explain. But the feeling around him changed. Even the air seemed tight, like the whole world had stopped to see what he would do next. Instead of reacting big or acting like it was nothing, Johnny stayed still. He simply put the phone down gently, like someone putting a memory back where it belonged, and kept going with the event. But everything after that time felt different. He spoke more carefully. His voice got softer, and when someone said the word loyalty, he paused just a little longer before answering. Like the word meant something way deeper than the question asked for. Fans said later they knew something had changed in that exact second. A goodbye had been read. A chapter had quietly ended. And even though no words were spoken, his eyes told a story, one that no writer could ever create. It wasn't just a look on his face. It wasn't just a text. It was a silent time where real life showed through the world of fame. And the world, without knowing, it saw Johnny Depp's heart speak louder than any news headline ever could. In a world where everything about famous people seems public, there are still secrets hidden behind silence. And this final text, the one Johnny Depp read and reacted to so unexpectedly, was not from just anyone. It wasn't a random fan message, a tabloid threat, or a normal update from his team. No, this one felt personal. Guesses exploded online. Some whispered that it was from someone he once loved very deeply. The kind of love that doesn't go away just because life got crazy. A relationship from his past. Not the big headline romances. Not the public ones, but someone who knew him before all the mess. Before lawyers, before crowds started saying his name in courtrooms like he was a hero in a movie. Others believe it came from a friend he had quietly protected for years. A name the public never knew, because Johnny made sure the cameras never found them. Someone who had been there before Hollywood, before fame, before the world had an opinion about everything he did. But the most touching theory, the one that made thousands of fans write long posts online with tears in their eyes, was that the text came from someone who stood by him when the world turned its back. Because let's be honest, everyone loves you when you're winning. When your movies make tons of money. When magazines call you amazing and one of a kind. When your smile sells posters and your signature makes auctions go crazy. But what about when the world changes its mind? When people who once cheered your name suddenly act like they never knew you. When silence becomes louder than clapping. There was someone who stayed. Not for attention, not for fame, just because they were loyal. This person never stood on red carpets next to him. Never posted their support online. Never used the mess to get attention or sympathy. Instead, they stayed in the background, a quiet force of loyalty, sending only a few words when things were at their worst. I still know who you really are. Think about that. When the world was yelling and pointing fingers, one person sent a message of strong belief. Not a long speech, not big promises, just a whisper of truth, the kind that only someone who knew him before could send. And that's why fans believe this final message was not a beginning. They end in silence. And in that silent time, with cameras watching, but not really seeing, Johnny Depp read her final message and quietly said yes to it. Not with words, but with a look that said, I remember and I understand. Some messages are just words on a screen, but others feel like time travel, pulling you back into a time you thought you'd already gotten through. This final text wasn't long. It wasn't like a poem. It didn't beg, blame, or threaten. It was gentle, too gentle, and that's what made it hurt. People think that the loudest heartbreaks are the most painful. But the truth is, the quiet ones cut deeper because silence forces you to feel everything you've tried so hard to avoid. The message she sent didn't say, I miss you, or why didn't you fight for me? Instead, it said something way more haunting, something only the two of them would understand, something tied to a memory that belonged only to them, a memory from a time before the mess. Before lawyers, before headlines, before the world felt like they had the right to judge his private life. Do you remember the night we said we'd always choose kindness, even if kindness hurt? Just that one line, no name signed, no goodbye. But that single question carried years of history. A time between two people when life was simpler, quieter, totally honest. To the public, Johnny Depp is a worldwide icon. A man with charm, humor, talent, and a toughness that shocks even people who don't like him. But to her, he wasn't Johnny Depp, the Hollywood legend. He was just Johnny, the man who once stayed up until sunrise talking about fear, dreams, and the scary cost of being misunderstood. That text didn't bring back pain. It brought back everything. The laughter no one saw. The late night talks no camera ever captured. The version of himself he once was before the world told him he had to grow armor around his heart. And that is why his face changed when he read it. He wasn't reacting to the words. He was reacting to who he used to be when those words mattered. Imagine carrying fame on your shoulders like a costume for decades. Being loved, yes, but also picked apart, made fun of, betrayed, framed, and expected to survive it all with a smile. Now imagine one message reaching into that armor and whispering, I still remember the version of you who believed that kindness could win. That's not just emotional. That's really deep. In that time, Johnny wasn't just a man reading a text. He was a man remembering a promise he once made to himself. A promise to stay gentle, even in a world that punishes being soft. Fans said later that when his eyes changed just a little, it felt like he wasn't in the room anymore. His body stayed there, but his mind had gone somewhere else. Somewhere far from the cameras, somewhere quiet, somewhere real. That's what true emotional weight does. It doesn't break you in front of people. It reminds you of who you were when no one was watching. And maybe, just maybe, that's why he didn't fall apart. That's why he didn't react with shock or anger. He reacted with peace, a soft, accepting peace. Because when someone sends you a final message like that, not to bring up old hurts, but to honor what once was, you don't respond with drama, you respond with respect. And that's exactly what he did. Everyone expected something dramatic. After all, that's what people have been trained to expect from celebrities. A visible reaction, a time worthy of headlines, something the media could freeze, screenshot, and turn into captions like Johnny Depp breaks down or Depp seen shaken after private message. But that's not what happened. When Johnny read that final text, he didn't freeze. He didn't blink twice. He didn't even look away. Instead, he did something so unexpectedly calm that it caught even the closest watchers off guard. He put the phone down slowly, almost gently, like the device wasn't just a phone, but a box holding years of memories no one talked about. Then, without a word, he reached for a small item. He always carried a silver ring, one that fans had seen, but never understood the story behind. Most people thought it was just jewelry. But those who had studied his interviews, his small habits, his quiet routines knew that he only touched that ring when he was trying to stay emotionally calm, a way to stay steady when something powerful tried to shake him inside. Instead of showing pain, he slipped the ring off his finger, paused for a second, and placed it on the table next to the phone. Simple, silent, but it sent a message louder than any outburst could. To someone just watching, it looked like nothing, just a man taking off a ring. But to the fans, especially those who followed him beyond the surface, it was a sign of letting go. That ring, according to longtime followers and fan groups, wasn't connected to money or fame. It was tied to a promise, a connection from a time when loyalty meant everything. And love wasn't measured by the public eye, but by silent actions, the kind only two people understand. By setting it down next to the phone, Johnny wasn't just reacting. He was responding. There's a difference. A reaction is emotional, raw, out of control. A response is chosen, shaped by meaning built from acceptance, not pain. And that is why this time became legendary among fans online. Clips flooded social media. Comment sections turned into emotional essays. Viewers slowed the video, zoomed in on his hands, his face the exact time the ring touched the table. That wasn't a breakdown. That was a farewell. He didn't let the past break him. He honored it and let it go. That was the calmest heartbreak I've ever seen. Some even said it reminded them of how warriors honor their fallen. Not with tears, but with respect. A symbolic action. Quiet but powerful. Saying yes to what once mattered without holding on to it desperately. And maybe that's what true strength looks like. Not in refusing to feel, but in choosing how to carry the feeling. Johnny didn't respond like someone wounded. He responded like someone who had survived a storm and finally reached the shore. No drama, no explanation, just a time of quiet closure. He didn't need the world to understand. He didn't need to speak. He just needed to say yes to it one last time. And in that silent action, a ring placed to the side. A final message acknowledged. Fans realized something important. Sometimes the most powerful thing a person can do is let go with grace. That single time, a ring placed next to a phone, may have seemed small, quiet, almost invisible in a world fueled by headlines and mess. But for those who truly watched, who looked past the cameras and into the man, not the celebrity, it changed everything. For years, Johnny Depp had been painted in extremes. To some, he was a legend, a creative genius with unmatched charm. To others, he was a controversy, a name tied to court cases, tabloids, and guessing. He had been clapped for, judged, worshipped, dragged, and put on trial both legally and emotionally in front of the entire world. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone thought they knew him. But in that one quiet act, choosing to respond with peace instead of show, choosing respect over drama, he showed a side of himself that no interview could reveal. It wasn't a reaction people expected from someone who had every right to be bitter, angry, or guarded. He didn't hold on to the message. He didn't chase closure. He didn't demand to be understood. Instead, he honored the time, said yes to the past, and let it rest, not with anger, but with gentleness. And that's what made people stop scrolling. Because in a world where most public figures respond to pain by lashing out, posting statements, unfollowing accounts, or making pointed comments on social media, Johnny chose silence. Not the silence of giving up, the silence of peace. A silence that said, I don't need the world to see my pain to prove it was real. That's when how fans saw him changed. He was no longer just a famous actor with a guitar and a history full of hard battles. He became something more human, more real, more deeply understood. A man who had learned that true strength isn't loud. True strength is controlled. People wrote comments like, "This was the calmest goodbye I've ever seen." He didn't lose anything in that time. He got himself back. Respect isn't earned through winning. It's earned through grace. And that's exactly what happened. Respect came back to him in a wave of quiet admiration. Not because he spoke, but because he didn't. That simple action broke a long-time story. The idea that pain must always be loud, that closure must always be dramatic, that healing must be public to be real. Johnny Depp proved the opposite. He reminded everyone watching that some farewells don't need fireworks. Sometimes the most powerful goodbye is a nod, a small movement, a ring gently touching a table, saying yes to something that once meant everything. And that's why this time became a turning point, not for headlines, but for hearts. It reminded millions that real love, real loyalty, real heartbreak don't always end in mess. Sometimes they end in peace. And in that peace, Johnny wasn't defeated. He was free. After that quiet time, the ring, the phone, the small change in his face, life moved on. The camera stopped. The interview continued, and the world, as always, got distracted with the next headline. But true fans didn't move on. They watched it again. They slowed it down. They watched it the way you watch a movie when you know there's a secret hidden in one frame. And then someone noticed it. A single sentence easy to miss. Spoken casually, almost too casually, right after he placed the ring down. He smiled in that calm, private way and said, "Some promises are meant to be kept quietly." The interviewer didn't catch it. They moved on to the next question, but fans, they froze. To anyone else, it was just a poetic phrase. But to those who knew his story, the way fans know him,